So I've got something totally different for you today, and that's a question where I'm not going to give you the strategy in the title. I'm not going to say what's being tested. I'm just going to give you the question, see if you can do it. It's a relatively hard one, and I've got one follow-up question afterwards, and you try any method you want. And I just want to see if you need the strategy that I'm going to give you afterwards. So pause the video, have a go at this question, and let me know how it goes in the comments. Right, for those of you who have tried it, I wanted to demonstrate how picking numbers can make your life a lot easier. If I'd put picking numbers in the title, everyone would have gone, oh yeah, I'm just going to pick numbers. But how many of you tried to use, say, algebra here? Maybe you called the original number of students X, and therefore the new number of students would be 1.16x, because it says in the second sentence, the number of students at the university was 16% greater. Or maybe you picked numbers, but you didn't pick ideal numbers and it was really hard. The reason I ask this kind of question is that some of my students, even those who've watched all of my videos, still hesitate too often to pick numbers. And honestly, it's a strategy that really helped me get the 340 in the GRE and the 780 in the GMAT. So I wanted to really emphasize how important picking numbers is. One quick caveat before we continue. The kind of questions where I don't tend to pick numbers would be with equations and inequalities, because there it's better to simplify and solve, whereas for a question like this, far better to pick numbers. Without any further ado, let's get to it. So the question says, at the University of Bruce Grove, the student satisfaction rate dropped from 95% on August 31st, 2016 to 90%, oh dear, on the 31st of 2017. If the number of students at the university was 16% greater in the second year than on the first year, what was the approximate percent change in the number of satisfied students at the university over this period? Some of you would have thought, by the way, this is impossible to find out because we don't know the number of students. But they're asking for a percent change, so we can do it even with hypothetical numbers. One quick thing I'd say to some students who are feeling quite intimidated by this question, I agree with you. There's a lot of words here, and that's one of the other benefits of picking numbers. It turns a really kind of intimidating, long, wordy question into something much easier. So what do I mean? Well, let's start with the original 2016 rather than starting with the new year. Let's say that in 2016 there were 100 students. 100 is a great number to pick when we're dealing with percentage questions. Now, it talked about a satisfaction rate of 90%, but before we get to that, let's deal with the percent change in the number of students that occurred. It said in the second sentence, the number of students at the university was 16% greater the next year. So how many students would that be? That would be 116, a 16% increase on 2016, which was 100 students. So in terms of just purely the number of students, we made up 100, and now therefore in 2017 there would be 116. What about the satisfaction rate? It said it dropped from 95% to 90%, meaning that originally in 2016, the satisfaction rate was 95%. How many satisfied students would that be if there were 100 students at the university? Well, 95% of 100 would be 95 satisfied students in 2016. But now the satisfaction rate is 90% for 2017. But remember, we're not dealing with 100 students anymore. We're dealing with 116 students. At this point, this is where GRE students will probably use a calculator, but I'm going to show you the mental method just quickly. To find 90% of 116, remember this is an approximation question. It said on the start of the fourth line, an approximate percent change, so we can cheat a little bit. 10% of 116 is 11.6. So if we take away 11.6 or 12 away from 116, we're left with 90% of the original. So taking away 12 from 116 gets us to 104. That's what we do when the question is an approximate question, or you need to approximate. Basically, we round a little bit. So I found 10% of the total and took it away, and that gave me 90%. Either way, I'm left with 104 satisfied students in 2017. So I can see there's been an increase in satisfied students. So I know immediately the answer would be D or E. And if I only had 5 seconds left in the test, you pick one of those. But let's quickly calculate the percent change. Do you remember the percent change formula? Percent change formula, really good to know, I've done several videos on this, is new value minus original over original times by 100. Here the original value in satisfied students was 95 and the new value was 104. Plugging that in, you can see that the change was 9 in the numerator, 104 minus 95, and the denominator, that's the bit that is most commonly forgotten, is the original, so that's the 95, giving us 9 over 95. Now, I know that's an awkward fraction, but again, you can't ever forget if the question says approximate. And here it did say approximate, so that's roughly 10%. That's 1 over 10 or 1 over 11, whatever you want to call it, times by 100, you get around 10. So the answer would be E. Now, before we finish off with the last question, I just wanted to say again why I picked this question, because you can watch all my videos, understand all the tricks, but still get questions like this wrong if I haven't sufficiently convinced you about when it's appropriate to pick numbers. This question would be awful without picking numbers. I'm sure someone in the comments is going to say, I did it with algebra and it was easy, but for most people, picking numbers is by far the easiest way to quickly answer this question. Anyway, let's get on to the next one. As before, pause the video and tell me what you get, and then afterwards you can see how I did it. See you in a second. Okay, for those returning students, this was kind of a test because I said just quickly about 5 minutes ago, I said I don't tend to pick numbers when there are equations or inequalities. So I want to see how many of you were listening. Did you pick numbers? That would make this question very hard and very long. This is why I have the title, What Strategy to Use. It's not always the best idea to pick numbers. Sometimes it's not. So when there's an equation, I don't tend to pick numbers. And you remember I said, what's best then? To simplify and solve. So let's do that here. It says, if A, B, and C are all non-zero integers, which of the following must be true? And then we have that equation. To simplify, let's expand the brackets, giving us AB minus AC equals BA minus BC. Now, if we'd written BA the right way around as AB, which you probably should have done, you'd notice something. A lot of you wouldn't notice this, but it's quite important to notice that there's an AB on the left and an AB on the right, meaning we can just subtract AB from both sides and they disappear, giving us minus AC equals minus BC. The GRE and GMAT both like to do that, where they plop something on the left and the right and see if you notice, and then you've got to cancel them out. Either way, what do we do now? Well, we can just get rid of the negative because it's on both sides, giving us AC equals BC. And now, yes, we are allowed to cancel out the C on both sides, but only because the question said that they are all non-zero integers. If it hadn't have said that, we wouldn't be able to cancel out the C, and instead would have to bring the BC to the left, factor out the C, and have two solutions, C equals 0 or A equals B. But that's much more complicated, and thankfully we can just cancel out the C because it said that C was non-zero, basically giving you permission to cancel it out. Cancelling out gives us A equals B, and that's as simple as it gets. We can't simplify anymore. No need to pick numbers, notice. We just know that A equals B. Which of the following must be true? A, B, C equals 0? Well, we know that's not true because they're all non-zero integers, so that's out. B minus C equals 0? Well, that would imply that B equals C, but we don't know that. And the third one would imply that A equals C, but we don't know that. And so therefore it's the fourth one. a minus b equals 0. Because if you push the b to the other side, you get a equals b, which we know to be true from our equation. Anyway, all of this was essentially a question I designed just to check if you were listening earlier on. Picking numbers is a wonderful way to de-stress the test and improve your marks if you use it appropriately for those complicated questions where you don't know what algebra to use or you feel the algebra will take you way too long. However, if there's an equation or an inequality, it's much more likely that you should just simplify and solve and not pick numbers. Hope this was helpful. If it was, let me know. And either way, have a great day.